The GovX Show is supported by Forrester, helping government organisations perform at their best. Visit forrester.com to learn more.
Hi there, welcome to another episode of the GovX Show. I'm Tim Coulthard, Community Director here at GovX Digital. And today my guest is Glen Ocsko, who is the Head of Local Government for Public Sector Delivery Experts Maytech. Great friends of GovX Digital, of course, and they'll be joining us again as a partner for the next event coming up in May on the 11th to the 21st. All the sessions are now live, so go and check out the agenda. I'll share the link in the show notes so you can go and have a look at that. Glen and I had a really interesting conversation about local government, how digital transformation plays its part, but ultimately the key aspect is about delivering better outcomes for citizens. He's a real passionate advocate for the way that local government can deliver real impact on people's lives. It's a really energetic and interesting conversation. I'll be along at the end to share some more information about Maytech's involvement and some of the sessions and more info about the event more widely. But until then, here's Glen. So Glen, welcome to the GovX Show. It's great to have you here.
Great to be here, actually.
Good stuff. So we're going to dive into some really interesting stuff around digital services, particularly in local government, and you've got a lot of expertise there. I'm really keen to sort of unpack some of that. But before we do, let's just understand a bit about you. You're the Head of Local Government at Maytech, which is a very exciting, grand title. So tell me a bit about your background and what your role and that principal area of focus is in that position.
Well, I'm the Head of Local Government at Maytech because I actually weirdly have a real passion for the sector. I spent a decade working inside it, in fact, across various different councils. And ever since then, I've worked with it alongside it for the last decade as well, working in various roles from kind of delivering websites and intranets through to massive nationwide data collection things and so on. So anything I can do to help local government in one way, shape or form, that's what I care about. And Maytech seems to be the absolute perfect place to do that.
Yeah, good stuff. And as a former local newspaper journalist myself, I completely agree. I think people don't really understand how much of an impact local government has on people's lives. In some senses, the daily touch points are more frequent than central government because it's your bin collection, it's where you're getting your benefits. It's all that exciting stuff that, yeah, it might not be glamorous, but it really impacts your quality of life.
100 times over. Everyone goes on about central government being the big deal. Even on local government election coverage on TV, they have MPs sitting there giving their opinions on what this does for the national picture. But realistically, local government is where the rubber hits the road. Almost every interaction you have that isn't to do with health is to do with local government, from the things you see like bins and pavements and rubbish collections, all that sort of stuff, through to the adult social care and the youth work and all the things you don't see, which is actually what makes up most of that local government iceberg. So it's not just fascinating, but vital and hugely undervalued.
Great. Well, we've got two advocates of local government here, which is good. I think we're going to be getting off on the right foot, and I'm keen to explore some of the aspects of how service delivery happens, how digital plays into that stuff. So let's start by setting the scene if we can. And there's a lot of aspects to local government. There's lots of geographies, there's lots of cultural variations and stuff. So my first question might be a bit unfair, but I'm going to ask it anyway, which is, how would you characterize the current sort of digital services landscape in UK local government? Are we in good shape? Are we behind where we need to be? What's your general sense of that?
I hate sitting on a fence because that's where you get splinters from, but both of those are true. I think I'm happy but not satisfied where local government is, especially how it's progressed over the last 6 months or year or so. It's in a good place, generally speaking. It really is. We've proven we can develop at speed digital capabilities and so on, and organizations are starting to really see the benefit of digital and how it can do things and how it can change and evolve at pace to meet 21st century problems. Because we've got to remember, until recently, we had 19th century institutions using 20th century technology to meet 21st century problems. That's mad, absolutely crazy. But the last year, as horrific as it's been, has proven that we can just unlock some of those, unpick some of those, and absolutely do the things using modern tech and modern tools. Now, it's not universal. Across the country, there are some fantastic examples, admittedly, usually within specific directorates or services rather than across an entire organization. But there are real good examples across every aspect of local government that can be pointed to and say, that is how we want to do things. What we need to do as suppliers and as the sector itself is to know about those more, to share those more, to learn from it, and to do it all in the open so that everybody else can learn that, rather than just saying, well, we did something amazing, and just be a bit more like us.
Yeah, and I think the visibility aspect of this is really important. I think we might come on to that in a bit, which is let's find those examples and celebrate them, and really sort of shout about them. Because if you're down in Cornwall, do you know what's going on in Humberside? No, not necessarily. So it's really important that everybody sort of shares their ideas, shares their expertise, and starts to bring together those conversations. So I guess if we start to paint the picture of what's going on right now, what are the sort of typical transformation projects that you're seeing, or is it very diverse still?
It is massively diverse. Local government can deliver up to sort of 600 different services. And I was speaking to one London borough, Unitary. They estimate that they're aware of 450 different applications they have to support. That's just the ones they know about, let alone the shadow IT that's in place as well. So it's a huge, broad sweep of things. But one of the things that's kind of consistent across all of those is a move to cloud. Now, for those of us who have been in the sector and talking about digital and tech for a long time, it's crazy to me that we're still talking about cloud. Why are we still making this argument? But so many services move a lot more slowly than we'd like them to. And so there's small workloads being placed on this cloud here or that cloud there, and finding the right opportunities to be working in with cloud technology is still a process that needs to be done. And there are still a holdout bunch of organizations who still insist on, if I can't see my computer, if it's not stuck under a desk in a room with a post-it on the note saying, don't switch this off, then I'm not interested. That's changing, but it's changing more quickly now, but it's still a battle that needs to be taken. So cloud migration is still one of those things. But some of the more specific use cases, things like case management, we're really seeing that across so many different services, where effectively they all want to be managing cases and managing individual information about people in different ways, but in ways where they're not having to actually create tons and tons of data. So that's a big one. And a transformation project, it's not so much transformation, but it is linked to that, is everything to do with data. Now, I'm going to mention data a few times when I'm talking to you, because data is the big thing. As far as I'm concerned, everyone goes on about AI and machine learning and those sorts of really sexy things, and they are incredible, but they only work with data. And so it's not just creating data, but also unlocking it from legacy systems that we've been locked into for 5, 10, 15, 20 years or more. Now, these platforms and off-the-shelf software, they lock things away because it's in their interest to do that, because it locks you into that vendor and that supplier. What we need to do is continue working with people to unlock that, to release that data, and then to present it to other services and systems and platforms. That's the next big problem that we've got to address.
Yeah, that interoperability leap. You're right, it doesn't sound quite as exciting as some of the other tech, but like you said, if you've got 400 business lines and 400 sets of data, if you can start to overlay some of those to find deeper insights there, then that's game-changing stuff. It might not be the moon landing, but it is about rich insights about behaviors, richer insights about the impact of service delivery, and that's where citizens aren't looking for a local authority to reinvent the world. They're looking for them to do the things they do for them a bit better. So I think that kind of scale of ambition is appropriate for, let's just make people's lives easier. Let's make our services a bit less sticky. Let's make that process a bit shorter, less forms, less filling in stuff. It's not game-changing stuff per se, but it's important to people, isn't it?
Oh, it really is, because people use these services on a regular basis. And the trouble is, so often, I say regular basis, that doesn't mean day to day. And so some of these services people might only use once a year, but every time they do it, it's painful. It leaves a lasting impression. If every time they go to engage with a service, it's a different platform, it's a different user experience, it's a different set of information, they're all repeating the same things over and over again. And so they tar the entire organization with that same brush. And if the digital interaction is poor, then every interaction with the council is deemed to be poor, and that undermines confidence in those services. And at a time when we need people to be able to rely on everything to do with their council, because the council are the people who are actively supporting them on a day-to-day basis.
And have you come across any examples in specific places where you sort of thought, oh, that's a bit new. I haven't seen that before. That is genuinely innovative. Or, like we said before, we should flag these things and celebrate them, I guess.
Oh, there's definitely quirky things that are out there, and some of the work we're doing but again, for me, the innovative stuff isn't necessarily whether there's a new version of the little clippy paperclip tool that pops up on a website. A lot of the chat bots and the Alexa skills and so on, they're quirky, they're innovative, but are they used? Are they useful? And are they going to actually impact on an organization and the services it delivers on a day-to-day massive basis? Which is why I want to kind of think back to data. So we're, and it's not because we're doing it, and there may well be other people doing this as well, but we're doing some work with Hackney they're in an unfortunate position where they had a data breach, well publicized, so I'm not breaking any confidences here, fairly recently. And so they're struggling with their data. In the process of looking into unlocking the data and restoring some of it, we've also realized we can create a replicable process to take data from different platforms, different services, to create essentially a data lake, and then start building data warehouses on top of that. And if we can do that in one service, we're starting to work on housing, we can do that across multiple services and start layering this information up in ways that we never even thought about before. And you're talking about kind of moonshots. When they sent people into space, they didn't realize that would have little side benefits, like inventing Tefal, non-stick frying pans, and the biro and things like that. Little innovations which have really fundamentally changed so much of the way we do things on a day-to-day basis are to do with those space shots. And having a data lake and a comprehensive view of data is going to start spinning off those non-stick saucepans before we know it.
Yeah, I think the innovation piece is interesting. On the one hand, an organization can't fall into the trap of just lots of sort of set piece innovation theatre. Look at us, we're doing this, and if it doesn't then meaningfully change anything. But I think if it's a way to unlock the attitude maybe inside the organization, but also externally, in terms of, yeah, we will try new things, and then the way that the citizens see it is, oh yeah, I am prepared to engage in a different way with that organization. Then sometimes, even if that individual project doesn't come to fruition, if it's altered culture or altered mindset, then it was worth doing, maybe.
Absolutely. And I think because digital is so much, digital is more than just whether you know how to use a mouse. Digital is an approach to doing things. The whole agile mindset that is kind of intrinsically linked to digital and the GDS approach to things, that can be done for service design as well. It's not just how can we build a platform, it's how can we build a service. And digital and technology is part of delivering that. But the mindset and the attitudes to that is what digital really is. And that's where the real transformation of services is going to continue to happen. So tech can play a part in that, but services can really be innovative about using those approaches to improve service outcomes. And at the end of the day, if everything we're doing isn't totally focused on service outcomes, we're doing something wrong.
Amen to that. That's the ball game, isn't it? It's what it's got to be about. And I'm interested in hearing how, when you're working with an organization in the public sector, what are the challenges that they're sort of coming up against now? I could hazard a guess at some, but interested to see if there are common sort of pitfalls or obstacles that you encounter when you're working in local government.
There are. There's some which I want to speak about in a bit, but one of the strange ones that isn't quite, it both is and isn't answering what you're saying there, is the mindset of transformation itself. I did a talk a little while ago where I said, actually, digital transformation is not what we should be doing. And my thinking around that was, imagine I was a kid of the 80s and all I ever wanted was a transformer, an Optimus Prime, that would turn from a robot a truck into a robot and then back again. That is transformation. That was taking it from one state and then putting it into something else. And too often I'm finding people who think, okay, let's transform what we're doing. Let's transform this service. Let's take it off of this system and let's move it to that system. Right, done. Let's tick that box. Now, what next? What's the next? That's absolutely wrong. That mindset is what got them into the mess in the first place. All they're doing is kicking the legacy can a few years or even a decade down the road. They're not changing anything. They're just updating it slightly. There's a reason that every major software manufacturer these days, they release iterative, constant evolutions of development rather than releasing software on a big basis. I mean, have you ever had to install the new updated version of Facebook? Oh, you haven't. You know, they just constantly roll out evolutionary things. And that's a mindset we need to get to. Transformation itself is part of that journey. And sometimes you need to transform fundamentally and sometimes you don't. But if all you're seeing is, okay, well, let's allocate some funding to transform this service and that's it, then you're doing it wrong. We need to be allocating constant funding and constant attention to evolving on a constant basis, because the needs of our residents and businesses are constantly evolving themselves. So yeah, the mindset of transformation itself is probably one of the biggest challenges that I'm facing, besides the obvious ones like local government hasn't got any money. you can't get around that one. But that doesn't mean they can't evolve. And the challenge we've got there is the fact that, say they're offering a massive platform that cost them £3 million a year in licensing costs. They then know that they could replace the key functionality of that for £1 million worth of development, £2 million worth of development, saving themselves a fortune in 1 year. And then for every year after, where they then don't have to pay that license, but they haven't got that extra money to invest up front. So yeah, we're working really hard to find ways of unlocking as much of that from other sources, and investment from hyperscalers or central government grants, or even ourselves contributing to that as well. Because we know if we can just get them that extra bit of functionality, they can get rid of so much cost and still retain the functionality that delivers the services they need to deliver.
Okay. And in the organizations that maybe are a bit behind where they need to be, what holds them back? And you know, I could name a bunch of things and you'll probably say yeah. So culture, technology, skills, capability, bunch of stuff like that. Does one weigh more heavily than the other, or is it a sort of combo?
I would love to say here's a subtle blend of, here's an algorithm that you can plug some numbers into. The biggest one, frustratingly, and I don't want to use it as an excuse because it absolutely shouldn't be, is still money. Local government over the last decade has had more than 50% cuts in real terms. 50% from, you know, when I was working in it, and even then, austerity was massively in play and decimating services. You know, it's not about trimming the fat these days. That's all been done. Now it's about which limbs we lose. And local government hasn't got the capacity to lose limbs. They've still got to deliver services. So money is always going to be an issue, and money for the right things at the right time. As I said, getting the money away from maintaining legacy things and hoping things will get better in the future, through to, well, let's rethink what we're here to do. Let's start taking a new thought process to this and actually delivering the functionality we need to do, commissioning based on outcomes, not based on platforms, and then just kind of crowbarring our processes to fit whatever the platform does. That's the wrong way round of doing it. It's being led by monolithic suppliers, and you're never going to win in that battle.
Yeah. And I'm interested in flipping this around a little bit now. So, you know, we've obviously talked about the organizations themselves, and you're working with those organizations. But as you said earlier, if the outcomes aren't right, then what's the point? You know, that's the whole point of this stuff. So looking from a citizen point of view, customer point of view, whatever your C in your CX might be, how their expectations changed. I guess there's two parts to this. There's up to March 2020, and then there's the world after that. And I think there's an interesting discussion to be had around how that itself has changed things. But even in recent years, let's say, expectations amongst customers, citizens, for how public services have delivered to them, how have they shifted, do you feel?
They've fundamentally shifted. And you're right, it is way before the recent challenges of the pandemic. I would say for the last 10, 15 years, then people have started expecting more. In the past, it was seen internally as acceptable to make sure that every council was slightly better than whichever council was down the road. As if residents care what's going on, or even know what's going on in the council down the road. It's not as if they can say, you know what, I'm not happy with the bin collection service in my council. I'm going to use the bin collection service from the council next door. They can't do that. So councils had this kind of mindset of, you know, let's just make sure we're okay so we can defend ourselves if needed. But places like Google, Amazon, Facebook, these companies have come along. They're the ones you're compared to now. If I can book a cab using Uber in seconds, know when it's going to be here, know who the driver is, be able to rate their safety and all these sort of things, why are we expecting the services we provide from a local authority to be anything less than that? Why can't we have Uber for fly tipping and waste collections? If I can make all these payments and do online banking in ways that I couldn't have even imagined 20 years ago, why are we then jumping through hoops just to be able to pay our council tax, and often having to still find people going into buildings and putting coins into slots? Tech has changed the game to such a fundamental level that people are expecting to be having the similar levels of interaction as they would do with Amazon. And why are we as local authority, or why are local authorities and suppliers saying, well, it's different for them? They've got loads more funding and they can. No, it shouldn't matter what our expectations are. We should be going with our user needs, outcome-driven, user-driven requirements, and aiming to meet those. And I think, the game has changed fundamentally in a way that I can't imagine it ever doing at such pace before.
And it's tough, isn't it? Because as you say, the expectation is there, the visibility of those other services there. I mean, the comparison to the local authority down the road, I mean, you can't change services, but you can see what's going on because the way we communicate, the amount of information in the world, what else is going on. So it's tough for them because they've got that set of expectations from their users, but they don't have the budget or the infrastructure potentially. So how do you navigate through the poor them sympathy to, okay, well, it's time to just accept that that's the expectation and get on with it? I have sympathy for them. I know you do as well, but how do they overcome that and start to make things happen?
Well, and I don't want to just fall into the trap of offering buzzwords like collaboration and communication, all that sort of thing, because at the end of the day, they're just interesting things to say. They're not actually tangible like things that we can do. Open coding is something that I'm really passionate about. It's something we do at MadeTech, is we actually make sure everything we release, everything we develop and build is then released to the world. So any local authority could take any piece of code that we've developed for another council and implement it themselves. So no council theoretically should be able to turn around and say, we can't afford to develop our own managed arrears service. We've done that. There you go. It's there. Use it. If you can't install it yourself because you haven't got the internal capacity, as many local authorities don't, then either another organization, another company can do that for you and with you, or we will do it with you in partnership, and then we'll train your teams up themselves in terms of how to do it. That sort of approach, that almost government as a platform mentality, is something that we absolutely need to not just be doing with one or two councils, but councils need to be demanding that of their suppliers. It's not good enough for them to just say, well, we'll just buy whatever it is, or anything we develop with you is proprietary. Even, and this is a challenge I have to local government, I've been involved in so many conversations where they think, we'll build it and then we'll sell it to other councils.
Yeah.
No council's going to do that. If nothing else, no council wants to be beholden to another politically as much as anything else. Yeah. And with collapses and rises and collapses of dual borough, tri-borough, quad borough agreements and so on, and around the world, around the country, you can't have that sort of situation. The sooner we get into a position where suppliers are it's demanded of them that they release their code into the open, and that they use code already released, as long as it's built in an open, transparent way, that's the only way we're going to really get to this kind of game-changing critical mass of functionality that's available to every council. And then councils won't have the ability to say, we can't afford it, we can't do it, we don't know how to do it. The options are going to be there, and political and local pressure is going to build. Because if I'm in my borough and I know next door they've got a piece of software which is available for free and it's 10 times better than what I'm using, damn right I'm going to be speaking to my councillor and saying, come on, that's not good enough. We're better than that.
I love that. I think that's a stirring rallying cry for everybody that's working in local government to flip that switch in their heads about, you're not competing, you're all in this together, and a rising tide floats all ships. So if everybody's using technology, if everyone's sharing their data and their code, that's a good thing. Goes back to that cloud piece earlier, that if everybody's in the cloud, then we can be more collaborative, we can do more sharing. You don't have to hand over the keys to the castle and share every bit of data you've got. You unlock the data sets that you need to share to make sure these things happen. So yeah, it's powerful stuff.
And this is the trouble, is that It's true, a rising tide does raise all ships. However, also, one goes on, we're all in the same boat. And that's the trouble. We're not in the same boat. At the moment, we're all in the same storm. And some of us have got a nice, secure yacht with lots and lots of luxury in it. And most of us are out in rowboats and so on. Those who are developing these yachts and it's not costing them anything else, throw some life rings over, throw some extra bits of functionality to help these people, these organizations who are drowning at the moment in old school legacy stuff, because otherwise they're going to sink. And we've already got situations where councils are really, really struggling immensely. It's in every local authority's power and every supplier's power to do something about that. And it's morally the right thing to do, as well as it will make economic sense for everybody involved.
Well, I applaud you for taking that nautical analogy and running with it, rowing with it. It's great work, great work. I just want to touch back on that COVID point, because argue the point, is it a game changer? Is the world ever going to be the same again? New normal, all of these definitions floating around. People will argue about the semantics of that. But for you, in terms of how you're seeing the delivery and development of local authority services, digital services, what has COVID done in terms of the playing field, and has it forced organizations to accelerate things that are already happening or invent from scratch? And where do you see it playing out in the future? Is this the sort of black swan game changing event that people say it is, or will there be a sort of recalibration further down the line?
I think I fear that we'll soon, like in the kind of post childbirth times, you end up kind of being happy with the baby and forgetting the pain that goes through it and the lessons you've learned from that. So next time around, it's a bit of a shock again. I worry that if we don't make the most of this now and change the approaches we take across local government, then we will miss out on the opportunity to embed an approach and a mindset that's going to take us forward 10 times faster than we ever would before. It is a game changer. It has changed the game already. It's changed the game we saw 6 years worth of digital development happening and being forced to happen in 6 months. I saw examples of councils where they've gone from having 300 employees working from home to 6,000 within a matter of weeks. Now I can't even imagine having those conversations without COVID coming along. Not just in terms of how we're going to do it, but are we allowed to do it? Should we do it? The world will end if we allow everyone to work from home. No, it won't. And we're now in a position where we've got guidance coming out from central government saying, okay, well, it's back to the desks, everyone, and back to the old ways of working, and let's just get back to normal. No, there is no back to normal. In Back to the Future, as soon as something changed, an entire alternate timeline was created. We've created that alternate timeline. It's impossible for us to go back to where we would have been if COVID hadn't happened, because that doesn't exist. It won't be acceptable to be running services in the same way, be running infrastructure and to be developing things the same way we would have otherwise, because we're never going to go back there. And nor should we, because those processes were, in many respects, meandering along at the slowest possible pace to succeed. Now, we've been forced to act differently. This is a real opportunity that's been paid for with horrific cost. But we can't change the cost in the past. We can change the potential cost in the future and the opportunities that are going to come forward. So it is a game changer, and it will continue to be so. And we need to continue at the pace we're doing. Well, maybe dial it down a bit, because it's been a hell of a year. But keeping that pace up is going to allow us to achieve things that would have definitely taken us at least another decade within the next year or two.
Yeah, 100%. Loving the Back to the Future analogy. I'm always in for a film metaphor, so love that. And on a sort of similar theme, and I think from having spoken to you, I might get a sense of where you'll go with this, but I wanted to ask you about what's coming next, what's coming down the track. And I very much have a feeling that it's not bots and drones hovering over the horizon and bits of kit and shiny stuff. Where are the next changes going to sort of happen in local government service delivery and digital transformation, whatever particular sort of name you want to put on it? Opportunities, new developments, stuff that's kind of on track but maybe isn't really mainstream right now. Where do you see it coming from?
I'm going to sound a bit like a broken record here, but I'm going to go back to the big D. It is data, because data, the sexy things are AI, things like machine learning as well, which is kind of linked to AI. They are an ultimate end goal in terms of changing the way we both deliver services and improve them on a constant real-time basis. There's a wonderful example in I think it's Chicago, of policing, how they use data to realize instead of having to hire 1,000 times more police officers, all they had to do was work out a certain route that a police car had to drive at a certain time of day. Didn't have to get out, didn't have to speak to anyone, just be visible in certain places. It dropped crime in those areas by 60%. Just by rerouting a police car. That was done because they had data and they could analyze that and test it and gamify it in many respects and do some testing and make changes. But they can't do that without data. You can't do AI without data. So unlocking decades and decades of data and historical records from platforms is going to be the next game changer, because that will allow us to look back at previous trends, to put modeling in place, and to allow business analysts and data insight people and a huge bunch of people far cleverer than I will ever be to look at it and to test things out in auto-generated systems and see how it will work. It'll allow us to then also put policies in place, test them, understand them in real time, and not have to wait 3, 4, 5 years down the line to see whether something was working and whether we should have continued with it. We can be doing this in real time through the whole smart cities agenda. But smart cities doesn't require big platforms. There's a bunch of organizations down in South London at the moment who are they're churning out pilot after pilot after pilot in terms of testing out small bits of functionality. That iterative thing is going to unlock different bits of data, create new data sets, and combine them in ways that we're never going to be thinking about. So it's a journey of modernizing that legacy tech, unlocking the data that's behind it, creating data lakes, and then building warehouses and whatever tools you need to tap into that and to find ways of doing things that are going to be real-time service improvements. It's really exciting, I've got to say. We did have like a 2020 vision for how we were going to do things, but 2020 vision turned out to be really blurry.
Yeah.
So we need
how many 2020 visions got canned quietly last year?
Yeah. We need a different level of clarity to work out how we're going to clear up 2021 onwards.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, it's an exciting prospect. I mean, I think you're right that through unfortunate circumstances, we've been forced into make some changes, which hopefully, if they stick and if people sort of retain the courage and sort of appetite for risk that they've shown in the last year, and we can keep it moving, then some really exciting sort of developments, opportunities to unlock as we go forward.
And if we can use digital and tech to free up the boring, mundane tasks from the plague officers up and down the country, local authority officers can get back to doing what they got in the job to do. No one that I've ever met got into local government to fill in forms. They got into it to make a difference, to do something, to work with people, and to really shape people's lives, their areas, and make improvements. And the more we can use digital tools to get them back to doing more of that, the better. And I think we're proving we can do that now, and we need to just maintain that pace, because we've spun up the flywheel. Now we get to really feel the benefits of it.
Well, Glenn, your passion for local government and how we can use technology is absolutely infectious. So it's been a brilliant conversation, and I'm really excited that you're going to be joining us at the conference in May for a session on digital services as well, so people can share more insights, hear more about your work with different local authorities. They can ask you some questions. So it's great that you're going to be involved. I'll share all the details of that later on with everybody that's listening and watching. But in the meantime, I think we'll wrap it up there, because I think we've left on a very positive note, which is always the way to be, with an inspirational vision for the future. But Glenn, just want to say thanks so much for joining me.
My absolute pleasure. Looking forward to it in May.
So there we have it. Thank you to Glen Ocsko from Maytech for joining me for that conversation. Such a passionate advocate for local government and the impact it has on our lives. Maytech are a fantastic supporter of ours here at GovX Digital. I'm really pleased to say that they're continuing to be a partner of ours for GovX Digital 2021. The virtual conference kicks off on the 11th of May and runs till the 21st with a few sessions each day, spread over 3 days a week to make it diary friendly for you to join the sessions. Glenn will be there to take part in conversations around digital services and local government. So to check out the full agenda, go to 2021.govx.digital. I'll put a handy link in the show notes for you as well, so you can just click away. But in the meantime, that's it. Check out the agenda and all the great people we've got lined up to share their insights with you. And we'll be back soon with another episode of the GovX Show. Until then, goodbye.